You ever been writing something and just completely lose track of time? It turns out that when you do that, it's more than just a hobby. Today we're diving into the incredible and yeah, scientifically proven power of our imagination, how it helps us process our toughest emotions and can actually rewire our brains for the better. So, how on earth does that work? Let's get into it. This quote, wow, it really just hits you, right? For so many people, creative writing isn't just something to do. It's an anchor in a storm. It's a lifeboat when you feel like you're completely adrift. It's a tool for survival when you're overwhelmed by grief or loss or just chaos. And that really brings up a huge question. When we dive into a world that we've made up, are we just running away from reality? Escaping? Or is our mind actually doing something essential, something deeply therapeutic that we're only now really starting to understand? Okay, so let's start with this idea of writing as a lifeboat. This isn't about distraction. It's about creating a little bit of stability when everything inside you and around you feels like it's totally falling apart. Think of it like this. Imagine your feelings are water, just flooding a room with no way out. A story? Well, a story becomes a container. It gives those huge, overwhelming emotions a shape, a boundary. The author of our source material talks about writing through the grief of losing their grandmother and how they created this safe, imagined space where they could finally let that pain out without any judgment. And that's where the healing started. So let's talk about that feeling you get when you're deep in the zone writing, that almost magical sense of time just melting away. Well, there's a scientific name for that, and it's a huge piece of this puzzle. It's called flow, and this concept comes from a psychologist named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He discovered that some of our absolute best, happiest, most meaningful moments happen when we're in this state of total, complete absorption. So how do you get there? Well, it's all about balance. See, if a task is way too easy, you get bored, right? But if it's way too hard, you get anxious. Flow happens in that perfect sweet spot where the challenge is high, it's pushing you right to the edge of your abilities, but you feel like, yeah, I can do this. And inside your brain, something pretty amazing happens. That inner critic, that little voice of self-doubt that lives in your prefrontal cortex, it just goes quiet. It's silenced. You stop judging everything you're doing and you just do it. Meanwhile, your brain's attention and reward systems light up, and you get so locked in that hours can literally feel like minutes. But flow is so much more than just a temporary good feeling. It actually connects to something way, way deeper. See, writing stories isn't just about feeling good in the moment. It's about making sense of our own lives. The psychiatrist Irvin Yalom, he believed that our number one drive as human beings is the search for meaning. And he saw stories as the basic tools we use to go on that search. Yalom pointed to these four givens. These are the big anxieties we all have to face at some point: death, freedom, isolation, meaninglessness. Heavy stuff. But the brilliant thing about storytelling is that it lets us confront these fears in a safe way. We can explore loss or choice or loneliness through our characters, and that turns this big abstract fear into a story we can actually grapple with. And here's the crucial part. Writing gives our experiences a why. It can take some random, painful thing that happened and turn it into a part of a larger story, one that has a purpose. It helps us find a reason, which lets us not only get through it, but actually find some meaning in it. Okay, so we've covered the feeling of flow and the big search for meaning, but what about the hard science? Let's look at the actual, measurable proof that writing can literally heal us. This is James Pennebaker. He's basically a pioneer in this whole field. He had a simple question. Could the act of just writing about stressful or traumatic stuff have a real physical impact on our health? The results were, well, they were staggering. The group that wrote about their trauma, they had fewer visits to the doctor, their immune response got stronger, and they just reported feeling better overall compared to the group that wrote about neutral, everyday things. This wasn't just in their heads, their actual bodies were getting healthier. And get this, these incredible benefits, they happened after just 15 minutes of writing, over only a few days. You don't need to dedicate hours and hours to start seeing a real, tangible difference. But here is maybe the most important takeaway. Pennebaker found that the way you write matters. Just venting your emotions on the page, not that effective. And cold, detached analysis, that didn't work either. The magic ingredient was the combination.
naming the feelings, and organizing them into a structure of cause and effect. It suggests a really powerful exercise, actually. Try writing about a challenge for 15 minutes, but focus not just on how it felt, but on understanding why it happened, using words like because and therefore.
And this brings us to our final piece of the puzzle, the idea that ties everything together: flow, meaning, Pennebacker's research, all of it together. It points to a deep, fundamental human need for something called narrative coherence. See, when we go through something really difficult, that experience doesn't just live in our heads as a neat, tidy story. No, it's just chaos. It's a jumble of disconnected images, feelings, fears, and that chaos creates chronic stress because our brain hasn't processed it. This right here shows the transformation perfectly. The act of writing takes that raw, stressful chaos and it forces it into a line. It creates a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. It creates coherence. This is basically our brain's core operating principle. We are story-making machines. We have this deep need to organize the world into narratives we can understand, just to feel safe and in control. Without a story, we're just left with uncertainty, and our brain reads that as a threat. So when we create a coherent story, it cuts down on that feeling of helplessness. It gives us a sense of control, even if the story is totally fictional. It lets our brain finally process the emotions, learn from what happened, and build up the psychological resilience we need to face whatever comes next. And that leaves us with a really powerful final thought. Writing doesn't just help us make sense of our past, it actually lets us build a better future. If the stories we create can literally heal our minds and our bodies, what do those stories say about our deepest needs, our highest values, and the person we are truly trying to become? Now, if this really resonated with you and you want to dive a little deeper, the source for this explainer is the book Loving an Illusion by Anne Skye. There's also a really supportive community called Limerence Pathfinders on the Skool platform. And that's all for now. Thank you so much for joining me.